Namaste, viewers. Welcome to Jaipur Dialogue USA, Saturday, December 11th. Very happy to tell you that today we are going to talk about a really remarkable, important issue, the Indian Administrative Service, which will be in the forefront of leading India into its march towards achieving a $5 trillion economy, and it has to be the frontline player in this. The political ambitions are one thing, implementation of those goals is critical. The implementation of the plan will rest with the Indian Administrative Service. To talk about this very important matter, I have the greatest of pleasure in welcoming Mr. K. Siddhartha from India, a wonderful strategic thinker, and he's been very close to the working with the Indian administration, and he knows India very well inside out. So we will definitely elicit his thoughts and views. Siddharthji, welcome to the show. Prior to beginning, I just wanted to request all the viewers and all the future viewers to like, subscribe, and press the bell icon and share the channel, the work we do here. Our intent and desire is to bring the truth in front. As I always say, Satyamev Jayate, truth must prevail. Now, wanted to begin this conversation with a very remarkable statement made by Prime Minister just about a year ago, in which he laid out four clear principles, which is very close to my heart, which is very, very heartening for me. And one of them was he emphasized on the need to change the negative attitudes of disdain, suspicion, and cynicism towards private sector and profit-making entities. Now, there are three other items, but I wanted to focus on this one a little bit more because democracy in America, as we have realized, and what they realized, was not the most efficient instrument of economic progress, because democracy is essentially based on three pillars of executive, judiciary, and legislature, which each one acting as a counterbalance to each other, check and balance. Decision making is always slow. In the American context, that's why you will find while the governance is democratic, the business is all in private sector. That's a very truly remarkable thing, which brought me back to the second element of Prime Minister's statement was that's why he was talking about the attitudes of disdain, suspicion, and cynicism. And he also said why babus need to run everything from fertilizer plants to airlines. This brings us to the very core of the Indian Administrative Service, which is a legacy of imperial civil service as we know it. Your thoughts going forward?
Well, we did inherit the civil services from British. And if you remember one famous statement made, someone said that India has the most destructive missile, that is civil services, and it can't be fired. That is what was the statement that was made. So that sums up a lot of things. But essentially, civil services, it actually is at the forefront, in particular the administrative services, who happen to run the country, called as the steel frame of the country by the British. But
Mhm.
since then, it has not exactly been the same case. Now, in the British case, they were to bind the country together, they were to run on the ethos of what the British thought was good for them. Now, if that principle is still working in the manner that it was working during the British times, then that is a cause of concern. And that indeed is one of the attitudes that is taken by and that is run by and that is followed by the people, most of them who are trained in different academies, right from their thinking to their conduct to the way they have to behave in the public to way that they have to conduct business as well, everything. You will not go on to find that most of the civils will go, actually going to find that civil servant will not go on to park a car in general. They will go on to take a completely different slot as if they are a different creature. That is one. Second is they will never ever try to be with the people, try to understand them. Their thinking is essentially that we are the rulers, and that rest of them are the masses. The third of this thinking is that they do going to think that whichever department that they are manning, their decision is going to be the best. And that is also because of the fact that they consider themselves, because their task is to integrate, their task is to coordinate. And the best way in which they can go to function is by integrating different departments and integrating different people. They can be the best coordinators. But when a coordinator becomes a decision maker, when I start judging things through a prism that is not desirable, that is always going to be fatal. And that has been so. If you if we pick up some of the examples of some of the most remarkable successes that India has achieved, whether it is Delhi Metro, whether it is going to be Anand experiment, that is, we are talking about Amul experiment, the dairy component, whether you're going to pick up Konkan Coastal Railway, the most grandeur projects that India has picked up, civil services had no role to play. If you also remember what George Kurian said once, he said that is I will wanted to run this organization of Anand and this concept without a single civil servant, because if they are going to be there, they will be bound. They are bound to create some problem. The problem is with the civil services is not the talent. Of course, talent-wise, they are going to be always very good, head and shoulders above. But then the attitude leaves a lot to be desired. So if there is going to be someone creative, they have to bring creativity with business, which they will never try to. Because the attitude is that they are the masters of the district. They are the masters of the department. They are the masters of the country. They are the masters of decision making. They're the master of all subjects. They're the masters of everything. With so much amount of an ego, with so much amount of an arrogance, what is lost is self-respect. And that is where the basic problem with the civil services in India lies. Because good number of people happen to see power, they happen to have a rendezvous with power at an early stage. A lot of these things goes into their head, and that really becomes an issue, that really becomes a problem for them. So when we say that to take India into the 21st century, what all that is going to be needed in this case is that is if we have to talk about it, then then we have to take a lot of steps which are going to be radical, which are going to be more business oriented, which are going to be more objective, which are going to be more integrative. Leadership, civil services understands is only about leading from the front without setting an example. Leadership also can be building consensus. Leadership can also be aiding everyone, like what the world's going to do it. Leadership can also go on to be by what Vivekananda said, Swami Vivekananda said, dasasya das, daso ka das. Leadership can also be about having loads of creativity. Leadership can also be when you have a lot of designs of thinking, design thinking, lateral thinking, rather than linear thinking. And that is what is generally missing either in the way the civil servants are picked up or in the way that they are going to be trained or the way they are going to be treated even in the field.
That's a very powerful opening and a strong indictment of the way the service is being managed and run. Could it be also the fact that the heritage of the British Empire, the Imperial Civil Service, remember 1947 was a transfer of power, it was not independence. We now have begun to configure that reality. The issue here is very important is that somewhere along the line in a feudal society like India, bureaucracy, as you said, they had the power. It was the best, it is supposed to be the best job in the country. And every young man aspires to be the best in the country that is there. People try, as we all know, hundreds of thousands of people write the exam to become of the part of the 142 or 1,000 seats of various civil services that are handled. So with such kind of an aspiration, and as you rightly said, talent exists. But what happens to that talent? What happens to the steel frame? Why that steel frame Despite that steel frame, Bihar remains what stays, and whereas other states develop. So the question is, there's something totally wrong out there, because the same group of people working one in one state, they do all right. In other states, they are an absolute flop. So that's a very important consideration that we have to take, that have we inherited a sense of power? The district collector, revenue collector, is now also becoming the chairman of a public sector undertaking, with the written examination, the entry point, which is very critical, because people can write exam in any subject. It could be English literature, it could be Sanskrit, it could be Hindi, it could be chemistry, it could be biology, it could be sociology. You write the exam, you make it to IAS, and after that, it's over. How can English literature, a student of any one particular discipline, run a fishery department, agriculture department? How can a person run, history student become, governor of RBI, which is right now it is happening and is doing a rather great job? So the question arises is that, is the selection process itself faulty? Do we need a lateral entry of people to come in the service to provide the expertise needed? Because what happens is, Siddhartha ji, which I know, we know the country very well, when a bureaucrat is in the job of implementing the government's intent. So if we look at demonetization, which Prime Minister Modi brought for varieties of good purposes, was not very effectively done. Supreme Court is now asking why it was done the way it was done. Implementation is the key for every government intent. So do you think that the process needs to change immediately, because you do not need revenue collectors anymore than you run to run the economy?
I deciphered three questions in the conversation, Vibhuti ji.
Yes.
One
You
has been
decide
that,
which one you want to answer and your priority. I always like to throw more than one. That's why I
that's
want to.
right, that's right, that's right. One has been about the selection procedure. Another has been that is it actually a steel frame? And the third is that is the way they are implementing it. Now these are the three questions. I'll be addressing all three of them.
Sure.
Now, beginning with implementation first. Now, if you take a look at the most important schemes, they fail because of implementation. If you take a look at whatever happened in 2611, it was not a policy failure, it was a failure to man the entire of the coastal area. Now, none of them were punished. If you take a look at the much publicized Twin Tower demolition that took place in Noida, it was not a failure of the public. It was not a failure of the businessman. It was the failure of the bureaucracy which allowed it to happen, till a time came when they washed their hands off. Now, everyone was punished except for the bureaucracy. Now, if you take a look at the most uh, the most risky things that has happened in the country, take an example of a Hambantota port being given to India, and it was Indian bureaucracy who was not in a position to understand what will happen if Sri Lanka gives this port to China. They said that this port is of no use, and that is on record. And of course, that's pretty confidential as well. But we can go to share that in this detailed here. So what happened was that India lost interest in both Hambantota as well as Chittagong, and you know what happened. We lost the entire of Indian Ocean, and we are still finding it very, very, very difficult to recover it. Now, so implementation is actually a problem. And you know why implementation doesn't take place? Implementation doesn't take place properly, largely because that requires investment of thinking. Now, civil service, what they have done is that they have made it a job. It's a service, and that's a difference. It's not a job, it's a service. It's a service that you render to the people. It's a service that you render to the nation. It's a service that you render to the government. It's a service that you render it to the constitution. It is not a job. When you make it a job, that is, this is what all is my job. That is, if I am not concerned with it. This is apathy. And when you have an apathy, you have to show this apathy towards the country, towards the countrymen who trust you, who have given a lot of things and responsibility to you to conduct it. So implementation really becomes a casualty. The second part is, as far as the training is concerned, you will actually find a problem. Most of these young recruits, let's say if a train accident takes place in some district, the moment it takes place, what they do is that they are not able to manage it and they call the army. Now, if the army has to be called in and they are the one who is to manage it, who are to manage it, why exactly is it that you are going to be there at all? So you must have observed COVID. I mean, they made a mess of it. Demonetization made a mess of it. Anything that you want to take it at a very high level, they make a mess of it. And then they are protected in the constitution. Now, incidentally, our constitution is written not as per the cultural ethos of the country, but of course, it has been made in a manner that it can be made convenient for the British to take it and to take it forward, forward, forward. People are not able to realize it, but now we are realizing it. Now you are also realizing that part, or in all. So they are protected by Article 303, 311 and 312. That means they cannot be punished easily as well. Now you have an absolute power. You can make thousands of mistakes. You are not accountable. And even if it is that this mistake is deciphered, maybe with the help of intent as well, that your intent was not good, nothing can be done to you, largely. Now, this is a complete British imperialistic policy. It's a complete British imperialistic type of management. That is what has been inherited, and that is what has been going on. And the fruits of it, you see it, that is the Indian Administrative Services. I don't know whether you know it or not, but in India, they are called as Indian Arapati Services. They are called I am safe, right? That means
Okay.
nothing can happen to me, I am safe. And generally, when people go on to enter these services, then they do go on to think of making easily something like some 1,000, 2,000 crores of rupees. It's a different matter that a good number of them are very, very good, and they are real genuine. But then, I mean, even if out of let's say 100, 70 of them are going to be belonging to the other world, then the country is going to be ruined. So that is implementation is a part. Implementation is a real problem. Now, why exactly is it that it happens is because UPC is the choosing body, and what UPC was aware of the fact that uh, that these people look for money, they substitute power for money. So what they did was they inserted a topic called as ethics and integrity. Now, in ethics and that is going to be testing the candidates' caliber, whether they are going to be ethical or not. And good number of students pass it. And despite the fact that this was not previously, that it was not in the previous examination, it happened only after 2012. A good number of candidates who have qualified into the civil service, they are very, very unethical in this case. Unethical towards the people, unethical towards themselves, unethical towards the country, unethical towards anything that is they are going to be doing generally. And I have heard this from a good number of people, in the sense that is recently I did meet one DCP, and who said that is Siddhartha, our time was so good. Despite the fact that we are not taught about ethics and integrity, we had a high amount of it. These young chaps, they are out to ruin the whole of the country. They hardly invest their thinking in the way things are going to be implemented. So that is going to be one part. Now, what exactly is required for civil services is indeed you require a coordination ability, you require administrative ability, you require that whether the person has a feeling towards the country or not. And what you test is you test it by examination. Examination is a trick. By examination, there is no way you can go to know a person has a management or administrative aptitude or not. And you are very right in saying that is how is it that a person who has qualified with, let's say, English, they can be very, very good in managing certain things. Of course, attitude wise, they can be good managers, but then from the perspective of knowledge, they can be fooled in maybe in departments of electronics, in departments of medicine, and you can always imagine that they can't go on to be a health commissioner. They can't go on to man the health department, largely because medicinal science has become so specialized these days that you require medical governance, you require environmental governance, you require water governance, you require psychological governance. It's not only administrative governance at all. So that's another point that leaves a lot to be desired selection procedure, and it requires a different type of a question on what exactly that we and what exactly that requires to be. Now coming to the other part associated with it, that is the selection procedure in this case is maybe in half an hour of a time in personality testing interview, you test whether the candidate has an ability, aptitude, or personality to appear for civil services or not, or to manage certain things. Half an hour, only half an hour. How can you test that? And how is it that a person, half an hour, you find a person who can be in administrative service, and he can be in police services, he can be in foreign services, he can be in revenue services as well. Now, don't you find a place of mockery at all? Is this a selection procedure by way of which you know that now, as per the number received by the candidate, you decide it, and who are the people who don't take the who take the highest echelons in this space, where the greatest amount of power is concentrated. It's not distributed as per the aptitude. So, supposing I don't go to like numbers, and I am given Indian Revenue Services, what will happen? What will happen to the department? Just think of it. Let's say I like to read a lot. I like a lot of foreign policy aspects. I like to delve myself deep into international relations, and I have developed nuance. I have developed a lot of nuances to understand the nitty gritties of diplomacy, and I going to become Indian Railway Traffic Service or IAS even. Now, just imagine this mockery. That a selection procedure leaves a lot to be desired. So, one is what should be tested is aptitude, and what you test is knowledge, and that knowledge also not with the help of language. I don't know whether you remember this one aspect. Um, our previous vice president Naidu, he made a comment to some IFS officers who were to send a letter to United States asking for an apology, and they were not even able to frame a letter. Imagine, they were not even able to frame a diplomatic letter, and they said that they were completely aghast at it. Now, in order to understand, we are very candid, but then I can always be very diplomatic with respect to talking to you, but we are not here to talk diplomatically. We are here for a very candid discussion. Now, if this is the issue, if this is the status, and this is the state of talent even, then that leaves a lot to be desired. Now, coming to the third part of it, how is it that they ultimately go on to get selected? Imagine when you have almost 1 million candidates appearing for the examination, and you select only 1,000 of it. Imagine the ratio. Imagine the ratio failure. Prelims is a test of elimination. It's not a test of selection. Anyone can go on to get eliminated. Even though you may have been selected in Indian Police Service before in the previous year, you may not going to find your place anywhere at all. That is a possibility, and that indeed is a possibility that rests there. So that is one. Mains examination is you have to just pack a lot of facts in a sack and put it there, point wise, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. Now, when that means that requires an administrative practice of examination, practice of giving a test. It doesn't train your mind to think analytically. It doesn't train your mind to think in a linear, in a design manner. It doesn't train your mind to observe a lot of things. It prevents you from an observational learning as well. Now, learning is the greatest casualty that happens with the civil servant, because at a certain point of time and after a certain point of time, they stop complete learning. And when they stop learning, of course, they think that they are going to be judged, and they start making mistakes, and you cannot control it. They are not accountable. That is a cycle that sets in thereafter.
I'm glad I asked you all the three questions, and I'm glad you answered all three of them. Important point here. You are right. It is a service, it's a public service. Governance is about public service, it's not a job. Unfortunately, in India, it becomes a job. You become an IAS officer, man or woman, your market is huge, your dowry system becomes very, very attractive for both boys and girls. And then you are recognized in the society, as you rightly said, thousands selected from amongst a million. So the question arises is that how will that shift? How can we shift that mentality? The second part was the suitability. That's very critical. I mean, I'll give you my own example. I'm a good with numbers, but I'm a bad accountant. I'm a good analyst. I can analyze a balance sheet. I can't prepare a trial balance. That sheer ability is something like, you know, Sachin Tendulkar and Rohit and cricketers. There is a bowler, there is a batsman. Both have different abilities. If you just told Sachin Tendulkar and this guy Kapil Dev to do X and not Y, you are going to have a failure. Badminton players are badminton players. They are not tennis players. That's why the suitability element is very important, and that the system fails to determine. Like you said, you are very fond of international studies, strategic inputs, or all that, but to put you into an implementation of something, you will be a failure. That's what is important. A banker need not be an IAS officer. An IAS officer will be a failed banker. This particular understanding, how will that shift? The second element was corruption. Now, let's not beat around the bush. As you very rightly said, we are here not to pay platitudes. We are here to assess a factual situation. I mean, recently a woman IAS officer was found with hundreds of crores of rupees in all kinds of things. And as one of my IAS friends told me, my batchmate told me, Vibhuti, we don't need to be corrupt. Money comes, it is brought to us. It's part of the system and a process. If you are not taking it, then you are upsetting. You are a wrong cog in the wrong wheel, kind of a thing. That kind of a situation. So the corruption is another big element, which is the biggest attraction for so many people. I remember people telling me, once you become an IS officer, you will have money reeking through your house from one way or the other. That's a big challenge. Prime Minister has taken na hum lenge, na kisi ko lene denge. So this man is trying to really reform the country, really transform the country. And to that end, how does the training work? I have not been part of that process, but how can a person be effective on the job if we don't provide right suitable candidates, we don't provide good training? And training doesn't mean coming to Harvard for a leadership program or going something like that, spending 10 days in a school and come back and you are ready to fight. It doesn't happen like that. Because the third thing is the learning part that you said. It's my experience. I represent a company called Human Potential Project. We install performance based cultures in companies and places where we work with. In India, I encountered serious scenario where nobody was willing to learn. They had serious issue, hum sab jante hain, kind of an attitude. We know everything, we don't need to learn. And that's the thing that you said, that when the vice president was quoting that the group of bureaucrats could not write a letter to this. How does one address that challenge in this 21st century now, with the challenge that is in front of us, the ambition to become a $5 trillion economy, to be a superpower which the world looks at it? Will the bureaucracy be a hindrance, or will they be accelerators of that?
You may not realize, Vibhuti, but you are so adept in asking so many questions in a conversation. You ask about lateral entry, you ask about a corruption issue, you ask about the training part, you ask about the learning part, you ask about the hindrance, so many of them. I'll answer all of them.
Sure.
To begin with, the Prime Minister was aware of the fact that where exactly bureaucracy is heading. They do work, of course. They know the entire ecosystem and they are the best suited to run the administration. They are best suited. There is no doubt on that part because they have been fed in that system. They have lived in that system. They eat that system. They drink that system. They sleep that system. So you require someone because you cannot go on to put a corporator and at the top of the hierarchy of administration and say he will not going to know which department to consult, which department not to consult. He can go to run it very efficiently. He can go to run it like a CEO. And this is what precisely Prime Minister thought. He thought of having a specialist journalist. Journalists were IAS officers, and specialists were the people who were to be brought in. So he inserted lateral entry. By lateral entry, a person who was going to be in corporate, he can go to enter into bureaucracy as well. And his aim was to make it a non-permanent bureaucracy, like what Canada goes into be having it, non-permanent bureaucracy. United States also to an extent, you can move inside it, you can move outside as well. Now, I'm just going to give you an example. I was talking to one of my batchmates. Batchmates, he was in administrative service, and I said that is now lateral entry is going to take place. So how do you see it? And I going to reply, give this reply in Hindi. अरे सिद्धार्थ जिसको चलने देंगे तब ना हम लोग उसको बर्बाद कर देंगे वो चल ही नहीं पाएगा. Now this was the reply. This was an attitude, right? Now meaning that he is there to do something good for the country, and because it doesn't suit your side, it doesn't suit your personal interest there, and therefore you destroy the whole of it. And you'll find that is a lateral entry in India is actually facing a problem, major problem, because they're not able to understand the ecosystem. A professional like you, who will, let's say, who had decided on a policy matter, and he said that these are some of the things that are to be done, and you are ultimately going to link it with something, some other program. Now, the person to whom you have sent this letter, you have sent this instruction, sent this assignment, he keeps quiet. He keeps quiet for 1 day, 2 days. Now you remind him. Then again you remind him. After 1 month, he again keeps quiet. There's nothing you can go to do. Nothing you can go to do. So what will happen? Your energy starts getting expended, not only spent. It starts getting wasted in negative things. That's number one. And second is you don't know how to run it. And then the link programs start failing one by one, one by one, one by one. Now, this is the problem with the lateral entry in the country. It's like you try to be objective. Objective in the sense that is you see that I'm saying it and it means that it's said. I said that is I'm going to do it. You have to do it means it has to be done. Now, you cannot go on to imagine the interpretation that will be done by the person concerned from bureaucracy. They say that ऐसे तो बोला ही जाता है. Keeping quiet is a type of a management. I'll do it, but I'll not reply it. Now, that is the reply that was given to them. It was also given to me at one point of a time as well. Bureaucracy is able to do it largely because of this fact. They are able to do it and go scot-free because of two factors. The first is, as I talked about, they are protected under Article 311 and 312 of Constitution. That's one. That is what the British inserted. Second is that they have a very good cartel. Cartel in the sense that is, it's like, if you say in a more ugly terms, it's like union baji, right? You cannot go on to touch an IAS officer for corruption because all of them will go to join their hands to rescue him. No, he's not. That is the brand. That is the type of brand that they're going to take it forward. So even if it is that they are meant to earn money, they will earn money. They will go to earn money. They will go to substitute power for money. And all of them will be in that cartel. Maybe they are going to be having thousands of differences with each other on various issues. But when it comes to this part, they are all acting in unison in this case. Of course, they're all going to do a lot of bickering as well in this case. Now, coming to it, when you're talking about training, then there are two aspects that are very significant here. A good number of candidates who join at 21 years of age, 22 years of age, they really feel for the country. They are really good for the country, largely because they have a learning ability. Their creativity is going to be strong. Their creativity is going to be high. And also that they are very young and they're raring to go. Now, at the same time, you also allow a 35-year-old person to join the services. At 35 years age, 32 years of age, the only interest that person has is to earn money by all unfair means in this case, right? That is going to be another part. So he's not concerned about learning. Once he is into the services, it's simply impossible that you're going to make him learn also. It's simply impossible. So, and training is something where you are said, you are trained, your mindset is trained in such a manner that you are said that you belong to the elite services and that you are the king of it. Now, this is something that is fed for 1 year of a time, and they are made to meet the choices of the people with the policy interventionist, everyone, and they said that is and they're trained in such a manner that they actually become elitist in their mind, in their thinking, in their actions, in their implementation. They hardly go to the grassroots level, except for some exceptions in this case. So training is completely British oriented. It's not. They hardly know. For example, we can go to discuss the difference between dharma and religion. You cannot go to teach an IAS officer what exactly is the difference between both of them. Now, of course, you can teach some of them, but the majority of them will be completely inimical to such type of a training. Any person in India who does not understand basic issues between the difference between temple and mandir, dharma and religion, something like that, Arth Shastri, an economist. Arth Shastri in India means something very different. He was a statesman. He used to be a political economist, and he was also working at a grassroots level. Economics is a completely different word. How is it that you can think that the person will be able to understand India and its ethos completely? That's another part. So the mode of training is questionable. That's one. The way certain things are trained, completely Western orientation, that leaves a lot to be desired. Of course, they are taught by the choices of the people, the best of the people, but then they are coached. It's not that they're mentored. As you say, of course, I allow me to use a Urdu word, tarasha nahi jata unhe. That is, they are coached. That is, to this situation, this is what you have to do. To this situation, this is what you have to do. This is all that they are going to be adapting. Now, it's such type of a training, the creative part, the lateral thinking part, the design thinking part, the out-of-box thinking goes on to get completely lost. And in this world, where you have to have an out-of-box thinking or every day, every time, every moment, this is the way that you have to go ahead with it. And to top it all, the majority of the population in the country, when they are district magistrate, they elevate them to a semi-god level. And when they are elevated to a semi-god level, demigod level, then you can imagine what will happen to their side. Only few people are able to retain that. Otherwise, all of them are going to be lost. And when you come to the learning part, finally, the learning is inhibited largely because you do not require any type of a security or insecurity. Who is the one who will go to learn? Either you have a zeal, so the attitudinal part is missing, or the second person who will go to learn is one who has really to learn, because without learning they cannot go to survive. Now, civil servants don't require anything at all in this case. Whether they do work, whether they do not go to do work, the only thing that can happen is that department can change. Nothing else will happen. They keep on getting salaries, they'll keep on getting perks, they'll keep on getting patronage, right? Sometimes, and of course, all of those things, that is money flows in, like some of these aspects. And I'm going to tell you a story. In one of these marriage ceremonies in Lucknow, I had some of my batchmates, and you know what we are talking about? They were talking about, I have 4,000 hectares of land in Portugal. I have 500 hectares in Texas. I am completely owning a farm in Finland. This was the topic of discussion. Not exactly that how is it that they can go to make the economy of the country and the feel for the country. India रहने लायक कोई जगह है. China को देखो क्या हो गया है. That was the type of a discussion. Now, even though certain things may be wrong, agreed in the country, in the system, and other things, then you are the one who can bring about a change. You know that you can go to bring about a change, provided it begins with you. That is why they can be a hindrance. They are a hindrance because of attitude. They are a hindrance because they don't learn. They are a hindrance because they obstruct others' work. They are a hindrance because of ego. They are a hindrance because of their arrogance. They are a hindrance because they are not creative. They are a hindrance because they are feeling jealous. They are a hindrance also because they stop not only learning but stop doing a lot of things progressively. They are a hindrance because they are actually a hindrance.
You are you are almost poetic in terms of using the word hindrance in this situation. If that is the case, how has Prime Minister Modi achieved what he has achieved in his since 2014? Where did he find those band of warriors who are supporting him? So, if we say, if you say, if I agree with your hindrance, poetic justification of who they are, the question is, how did Prime Minister achieve what he has achieved? And of course, he's extolling upon them to treat people very properly, because one of the four things that he said, you know he uh, he said that, ask where will India reach if the entire country was handed over to the babus. And there is a very interesting thing that we talk about in our work, in our training programs and in our learning programs, that we talk about is that if every person in the company was just like me, what kind of a company would that be? you know it would be an absolutely unworkable place, because the teamwork requires variety of people to fulfill the need of the hour. So there is right now World Cup soccer going on. There is a striker, there is a goalkeeper. They have different roles. If every all the 11 players were just like same Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi, there would be no football. That team will never be able to win, because in the goalkeeper you will have a very as a goalkeeper you will have a Messi as a very small guy. So the question then arises here, Siddharthji, is that how will that change? Who will change that? Because they have no accountability. They're protected by constitution. uh, so who is running the show here? You can't ask a villain to become a hero overnight. How will that change happen then?
I'll rephrase some of these things. When I say hindrance, hindrance means a majority of them,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, I totally understand that.
Yes, yes,
I'm saying that it's a system.
yeah,
So one
that's right.
person can't do everything else. There are good people. I mean, let's be very clear. There are good
Yes,
guys and there are not so good guys. So the question arises is that how does the good dharma, victory of good over evil, how will that happen here?
there is a very specific saying in Delhi that is, if you have to kill any idea, take it to PMO, right? This is something that is prevalent in Delhi and Delhi NCR region. If you have to kill any idea, take it to PMO. They'll make you run. I mean, contrary to the popular belief, but that is true. The Prime Minister must go on to know that part also. Prime Minister have been able to run the show largely because of some real loyal people, some real warriors of sorts in this case, who work day in and out and they understand the system and they are able to comply with it. But then they are at the highest level of the hierarchy in this case. That is the way. Well, when you talk about how is it that we can go to improve upon them, I'm going to begin by their selection. We don't have a dearth of people who feel for the country. But to pick up those people who feel for the country, to pick up those people who can administer a lot of things. I may not be very good in examination, but I can be a very good manager. I may not be very good in writing in a language, but I can be an excellent PR. I may not be very good to wield my power, but when it comes to extracting business and maybe selling the country or selling something, there can be no match for it. And who knows? The Prime Minister is the best salesperson that I have ever seen. He can sell anything. Even G20 he is selling. Indonesia has not been able to sell it in the last 1 year the way he is selling it. So we have different abilities. The merit of the selection part will be to understand these different abilities. And to begin with, I'll go on to begin with reform of the examination system. The examination system leaves a lot to be desired. So by examination system, you can actually pick up those type of candidates who are really fit for the country. That's one. And you have to pick up a administrative services. in a different manner, police services in a different manner, foreign services in a different manner. Now, I'll always advocate that when you're picking up someone for the police services, begin from their constable. Pick up at 18 years of age, 19 years of age, 20 years of age. Allow them to feel the lowest hierarchy. Be a constable for some time. Be a daroga for some time. Be a sub inspector. Be an SHO, then be a DSP, then be an SP, and then rise accordingly as per the way that you are able to manage it. So different services require different type of attitudinal traits, a different type of examination, a different type of a selection, and a different way of entry. That is one part. Now, it's not too difficult. If we can go on to reform ISRO in just 2 years of a time, so we have in space, and we have so many other organizations. Reforming the civil services is not going to be too difficult once the prime minister goes into that group and he is thinking about it. He is actually thinking, and you'll find it that the joint secretary rank people in the PMO, they're hardly 25-30% of IAS. Most of them are from different type of services and who are meant for it, who mean business and who actually are willing to work for the country with a service ethos. That's one part. Second is, even if you go ahead with this type of selection procedure, then what we require to do is we must change the way interview is going to be conducted. There must be 2 interviews at least, must be 2 interviews, and the mains paper must be changed, and the prelims too. Now, what you do is that you go to weed out a lot of talent at the prelims level, but because that requires a lot of village people, a lot of Hindi students are weeded out at level because they are not adapt right from their childhood to appear for the examination, which requires to calculate them very, very, very fast. So you require to reform it so that you don't only going to be having talent, but talent with an attitude. That's the second part. And then the mains examination requires a reform so that the student, whatever they feel, that is what they write. Now, in this case, they are able to camouflage a lot of things. And then in the interview, you require a major reform, whereby why can't you go on to have a 5-day of interview session, the way it is done in a serious, so that you can know who is a person who is inherently going to be corrupt. And no matter what, they will go on to steal the country. That is one part. Second is the training part requires a complete overhaul. That is it has to be non-British. It has to be non-British. Right now, it is a completely British-oriented system. Completely British-oriented system. So, right from everything in this case, that is, you're still taught how to ride a horse in this case. Of course, in certain cases, it may be significant and so on and so forth. But then, you require to be taught a lot of things. If you have an attitude of learning, you can go to learn a lot of things, even when you are going to be in the field. The third part is you must going to have a higher degree of accountability for the bureaucracy. Unless they are going to be accountable, unless they are made to be accountable, then there is nothing that can happen. Can you imagine? I have known cases where a bureaucrat, in order to favor someone of 5 crore rupees, they vested 1,200 crore rupees of the government only because they wanted to benefit someone of only 5 crore rupees. That is what they are liable to do. And of course, there are certain things that find their way to RTI. A lot of things don't find it well because at that level, at decision making, you just keep on delegating this. You do this, and if the problem crops up, then where the person will going to go? Where will they go, Vibhuti ji? In the court. And that is the basic reason for rising number of cases in the lower court. That is the basic reason. Ask them, and all because all of them have been stung by the administrative system. Now that requires an intervention. Why exactly that these things are not accounted for and accountable? So of course we require a good amount of an overhaul in this case, but then accountability will go on to teach a lot of things. Incentive will go on to teach a lot of things, and also
I will interrupt you here, because if they are protected by Constitution Section 311, 312, as you mentioned, if they are, as you said, they are a cartel, they are each one protecting the other one, and they are the ones who are implementers of the idea, who will make the change there? because they will never let it happen. Just as you know, the lateral entry of people from experts to come into the various fields, that's what the prime minister is wanting to. So they will not allow it to happen because their power center then dilutes and decision making goes away from them. So then, is it a situation unreformable, or is it a situation where there are some, it takes one to make a change? That's the point which took one Elon Musk to dismantle a toolkit. The way Twitter was used, we have had three iterations of change. We know that Twitter disclosures have happened, and it's shocking the way Vijaya Gadde and Parag Agarwal and Jack Dorsey lied to the congressional committee here, which is a crime according to the U.S. laws. So the question arises is that it takes one person to make a change. Who will do it? If the entire clan is against you, how will this ever happen? Or are we just going to be talking on the TV for academic discussion? Where will the change happen? How will it happen? How will accountability come in then?
I give you a story. Some time back, I was talking to some channel people. They had called me for an interview. And I said that, he said, why don't you want to pick up this issue if we are feeling a problem? They said in Hindi, सर ऐसा किया था अगले दिन बिजली काटने चले आए थे कोई ना कोई पिटिक्स लेकर. Now imagine that if you go off air for about 4 hours of a time, and of course they're going to say now everything is okay, our reputation is gone. Once it happens, twice happen. So they know every tick in the book somehow to tease you, torment you. It can happen. It can happen because even in the system, even in the department, there are people who are looking for a change, who think that a change is going to be required. They think that is this thing cannot continue. It is not good for the country. They do think that there are certain ways in this can happen. It is only that Prime Minister has to choose them. If you recall it, Prime Minister once said कि आपने मेरे 5 साल खराब कर दिए अब नहीं खराब होने देंगे. If you recall that. Pranab Mukherjee made a similar remark. I am not making that remark. Prime Minister Modi made it. Pranab Mukherjee made it. Then also Naidu made it. I mean, our Vice President also made it. And who has not made it in this case? So it takes one person. So Prime Minister is the one person who is going to be doing it. So it is difficult, very, very difficult. But then, see, Indian Space Organization is not manned by bureaucracy. It is rising. It is rising so fast. It's riding almost in a vertical trajectory. Amul was not manned by bureaucracy. It did its wonders. It is still a brand. It is still a brand. So it is up to the government. How is it that government requires to be strong? It requires a strong, that means from a perspective of election, it requires to be strong so that not too many people can go to damage it. Because most of these officers, they have a habit of deal-dalling. They'll start mixing with the opposition. They'll start mixing with another one. They'll start playing a politics in that place, and you don't know what can happen. So one change can happen. So you have to think about 4 basic things. First is a selection procedure. Second is the training procedure. The third is some reform. If the government can dismantle Article 370, they can always go to dismantle 311 or 312 or modify them as well. And the fourth is the accountability part. How is it that they can go to fix it? And the fifth is, of course, evolving a separate, parallel, pure, truthful system by way of which some of these departments can go to become a role model of sorts. The other things will start following you soon. Sooner, there will be people like you, people like so many of them, who can actually bring about a change in the country will be needed.
Thank you. The other part which I wanted to focus on, and that will be the last question of the day, is that for India to become a superpower or become a $5 trillion economy, you need the support and the trust in private sector. United States is a wonderful example where the private sector is trusted. I mean, the entire defense contracts in America, they are all in private sector. All the innovations, inventions, discoveries, and everything are happening in private sector. Advanced weaponry and everything else is happening in private sector. In Indian context, private sector is mistrusted. And I think that was the reason why Prime Minister made a very vocal statement saying that he emphasized that the private sector is as necessary and equal a stakeholder in the nation's progress as anybody else. He also talked about, as I said earlier, that we have to get rid of the negative attitude of disdain, suspicion, and cynicism towards private sector and the concept of profit. Do you think it is happening in the desired direction? Because right now, the leftist cabal in India is attacking every change that India is trying to achieve to become a $5 trillion economy. Will the bureaucracy be a hindrance? Back to the same question. Or will they be supportive of that intent?
Well, to say that they will be hindrance, they have always been so. They have been supportive as well, both of them. But then, as it suits them, and that is where the catch lies. As it suits them, right? You go on to get a good posting, so you start behaving well. If it doesn't, then you start creating a hindrance of sorts. That's one part. Second is as far as private sector is concerned, we have already gone for privatization. That is the Prime Minister made a famous statement as well. That is the government has no business to be in business. That's I mean this is the significance of this statement, right? And everywhere, even in ancient India, the Sanatani businessman, if you recall it,
Yeah.
they were the one who used to be the highest grade of people in terms of ethics, in terms of character, in terms of conduct, everything imaginable, everything imaginable. They used to be at the highest echelons. Now, this is something that can be done even in India as well. You have a system whereby you can have a report of who is doing what, and you can shunt them. You can give them a non-lethal posting of sorts, and this is something that can be done easily. You can always pick up people who are always going to be disruptive and then marginalize them and bring in some people who are not going to be so. The government is trying to do it so, and the government is trying to do it earnestly, really, really earnestly. The problem is that the country is large. There are a large number of people also. In this case, there is a very strong cartel that is existing. So, in order to bring in private sector, because private sector can be the only one who can rescue the country. Without, if you can be a bit more candid, I see it that Adani is the one who is taking the charge of manning the entire of Indian Ocean. You have to have strong private sectors who can deal with strong private sectors of other countries, maybe China, maybe United States. You need to have someone who can go on to have an absolute command and control over 5G. You need to have someone who can go on to man space as well equally. You need to have someone who is going to be a king of aviation, king of arms manufacturing in the country. And everything is being done in the private sector. So that is already started happening. A space is whole of a space sector, whether it is going to a micro space, whether it's going to a micro satellites, launch vehicles also, even the space hub that has been created in History Harikota, everything is in the private sector, managed not even by one single bureaucrat. And still, it is doing wonders in this case. So that is happening, Vibhuti. What is required is some of these places where these bureaucrats have a very good hold, you can bring about a change, like the district magistrate. You can bring about a change. Like the police officials, you can bring about a change. The government requires also to show a will towards it. Someone told me some other day that the commissaries of police have been established only because the government wants to have a single point collection of money. Now, if that is going to be the case, then who will reform them? You know it better, right? So, in some places, the government has an interest not to reform them. In some places, they do have. And that's the way that system is going to go on. All in all, it has to weigh in what is going to be in the interest of the country. A lot of things that are in the interest of the country that will not interest the country right now. I'll say that once again. A lot of things that are in the interest of the country will not be in the interest of the country right now.
This is a very frank candid conversation on the state of Indian bureaucracy, the Indian administrative service. And, I hope people have been watching that. I think we will share this video with those people as well. Because, you know, Ram bharose kaam nahi hota hai. As you very rightly said, that, what is in interest of the country is not in the interest of the country. So, you pray to Ram, but Ram bharose kaam nahi hota hai. You have to work hard to do that. It's a very serious conversation we have had today. It's not a pleasant feeling to see that the bureaucracy is the hindrance, and a few good people will have to transform themselves. Are working. I am an incorrigible optimist, so I will end by saying that I believe that there will be good people within the system that will force the change. Because I believe that in this new era of technology, where communication travels faster than the speed of lightning, technology is a very big help to Sanatan principle itself, as well as the fact that we can't hide anymore. We can't hide anymore. You leave a trail behind. The question is, who is catching the trail? Friends, thank you for watching the show today. Thank you, Siddhartha, for being here. Next Saturday, I'm very happy to announce that Mr. Rajiv Malhotra and Vijayaji will be on the show talking about the snakes in the Ganga. I think that is a logical follow up of the program today that we have had, that India has lots of snakes in the Ganga, and each of the snake has to be snared out or purified because they are in Ganga itself. So, with these words, I always say truth will triumph. Satyamev Jayate. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, and press the bell icon. We keep continuing shows. We are here to talk about freely and frankly, the truth, the ugly truth, the reality. We need to deal with that. If we don't deal with that, we can always be in a situation of feel good. But the feel good is not really, to borrow Siddharji's phrase, the real feel good situation. Thank you very much. Delighted to be here and see you again sometime. Thank you, Siddharji. Thank you.
Thank you, Vibhuti. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be talking to you.
Thank you.